Perfect. You're welcome. We got a great group this afternoon for you, Sebastian, so that way we can learn more about what you do at the OFM, Office of Foreign Missions. So as we get kicked off this afternoon at our NIVTA webinar, I just want to thank all of our attendees this afternoon, of course, for taking time out of their day to be with us for our webinar. We've been doing a lot of work to get some great, interesting topics in front of you. And I think that this is one that a lot have very big interest in is how do we help with the registration and titling of the diplomatic vehicles? We met the team with the U.S. Department of State and the OFM, Office of Foreign Missions, back in our DC Auto Show when we hosted that for our second time. And it was wonderful to have you all there to educate the vehicle title agents, the dealer title agents that were in the space. I don't know if you remember, Tracy was there on site too. So this is a great opportunity because she's familiar with the presentation that you had in person. We look forward to that event again this year in January, and we hope to connect again and have you guys there in person. But it's wonderful to have you and your team here, Sebastian, to go over some training information and how we need to process these transactions and best work with your department. I think the biggest thing for all of our attendees this afternoon, just a couple of reminders, just about being courteous to each other when we're presenting. So if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you want to state, feel free to put that in chat. We'll have Q&A certainly after the presentation is over. So please, know that you can come off mute, join in. This is one of those moments where you have the opportunity to ask those questions directly to our host. This will be a recorded webinar. As mentioned, in these webinars, we put them on our NIVTA YouTube channel, and we also share the link out with all of the attendees from this webinar, so you have an opportunity to see that firsthand. So, Sebastian, with that, if you would like to, I want to make sure to pass it over and give you a moment, and anyone on your team that would like to do an introduction to jump in, and please feel free to introduce yourself. We're so happy to have you here and supporting the members of NIVTA.
Thank you so much, Beth. Hi, everyone. My name is Sebastian Kopek. I'm a Foreign Affairs Officer here at the Office of Foreign Missions. I'm here with the rest of my team at OFM, our Assistant Director, Fatima Quiroz, and our Outreach Coordinator, Rosalex Quinones. Thank you to them for helping put this together. Today, I'm just going to be going over the registration and titling process for diplomatic vehicles that we do here at OFM. There we go. So just to begin, the U.S. Department of State's Office of Foreign Missions, my office, is the exclusive issuing authority for driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, and vehicle titles for foreign missions and their eligible members here in the United States. Before we begin, I want to sort of briefly go over our agenda and sort of what we're going to be reviewing here today. First, we're going to start with eligibility, what diplomatic mission members are actually eligible to receive services from OFM. Next, we're going to go into tax exemption, how missions and yourself can request tax exemption from us for vehicle purchases. After that, we're going to go over the main registration and titling process, as well as how to send ownership documents to our office. After that, we'll be going over to the OFM regional office presence, not just here in DC, but all over across the country. And lastly, we're going to end with an overview of the Department of State titling process and a Q&A led by Beth. So to begin, eligibility, who's actually eligible to receive services from OFM? A U.S. Department of State driver's license, a diplomatic ID, or tax card presented at the time of purchase is going to be the main indicator that a vehicle can be registered with OFM. You can see on the right, these are sort of three different variations that you can see for personal tax exemption, diplomatic ID, and driver's licenses. Any of these can be shown, and you can know that the individual is a diplomatic mission member. Vehicles sold to foreign missions, mission members, and their eligible dependents must be registered with OFM, and it cannot be registered with the local DMV office. So not with the Maryland DMV, not with the DC DMV, not with the Virginia DMV, none of the DMVs across the country. In terms of tax exemption, requesting a tax exemption from OFM is pretty simple. All you have to do is email us at ofm-fms@state.gov or email one of our applicable regional OFM offices. And you're going to include the following information: the buyer's name and PID, the mission's name, the vehicle's VIN, make, model, year, and color, as well as your dealership's name, appointed contact, email, phone number, and address. And on the right, you can see an example of what one of these tax exemption letters looks like that we'll send you. Please note that any vehicles sold to foreign missions, mission members, and their eligible dependents may be exempt from the payment of sales tax, but the actual tax cards that they might present do not confirm exemption of taxes for vehicle purchases. Only this vehicle tax exemption form can confirm eligibility. So quickly going back to these cards, the main sort of information that we need from this is the PID. That's going to be the personal identification number. Think of this sort of like a driver's license number or a social security number. It's a unique identifier for the individual mission member. On the diplomatic ID card and driver's license, you can see it's that 10-digit number right there, ending in 02. All right. In terms of the registration and titling process, there's a few things you need to keep in mind. Firstly, dealerships may issue temporary plates at the time of purchase. The buyer is responsible for submitting registration applications to OFM. Any applicable fees are invoiced to the buyer and not the dealership. And any lien or lease noted on the ownership documents is going to be recorded at the time of registration, and a perfected lien title is going to be mailed out to the interested party. Upon registration, any electronic title is going to be created and maintained by our office. Lastly, license plates, diplomatic license plates, are provided directly to the buyer's mission and given to the individual or the actual diplomatic mission. In terms of ownership documents, the documents that we require from you in order to actually register the vehicle, there's roughly 3 types that we'll need for new vehicles, used vehicles, and leased vehicles. For new vehicles, we're going to want that original certificate of origin and a signed odometer statement if it's not already on the CO. For used vehicles, we're going to want that original state title, any ownership, original dealer reassignments, if applicable, a signed odometer statement, original powers of attorney, if applicable, and a lien release letter, if applicable. For leased vehicles, very similar. We're going to want that original certificate of origin or state title and all applicable dealer reassignments, the signed lease contract, the signed odometer statement, and any original powers of attorney, if applicable. These documents can be mailed directly to our DC headquarters here at the Office of Foreign Missions at 3507 International Place Northwest, or our applicable OFM regional offices. Speaking of, our presence here at OFM does not just mean here in DC, Virginia, and Maryland. Outside of our headquarters, we also have 6 regional offices spread across all 50 states and territories in Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, and New York. You can also see the contact information emails for each of our regional offices. Basically, any services that diplomats need outside of DC, Maryland, Virginia, those ownership documents are actually going to be sent to our regional offices. So for example, a diplomat buying a car in California, Southern California specifically, is going to be sent to our OFM Los Angeles office. But a diplomat based in DC buying a vehicle in Pennsylvania, those documents are still going to come to our DC headquarters. It depends on the actual mission of the diplomat, not necessarily where the vehicle is being bought. And if you have any questions, we can talk more about this later. Here's an overview of our contact information for our regional offices, their actual address, phone number, and email. All this information can be found directly on our website at www.state.gov, as well as our information for our Washington, D.C. headquarters. We have a phone line that's open on Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can always call us, but always email is always a great option as well at ofm-fms@state.gov. All right. Lastly, I want to go over the titling process here at the Department of State. Dealerships purchasing vehicles titled by the Department of State should note the following. OFM will not issue a transferable title until it's requested by the seller's mission. Department of State titles are not released to the seller's mission until diplomatic license plates are returned to us and all applicable fees are paid to our office. Any requests for duplicate transferable titles should be submitted via email to ofm-fms@state.gov or one of our applicable regional offices. Also note that a $25 service fee is going to apply, and that can be paid via pay.gov. We no longer accept checks. On the right, you can see a copy of what one of our new well, maybe not so new Department of State titles looks like. All right, in terms of lease titles, this is going to be a three-step process. Firstly, you're going to want to mail the original documents to OFM like we went over earlier. Second, OFM will send a perfected, non-negotiable title to the leasing company at the time of registration. And third, when that vehicle is titled out by the mission, the negotiable title for the leased vehicle is sent directly to the leasing company and not the purchasing dealership. Any questions regarding perfected lien titles should be sent to us directly at ofm-fms@state.gov. So, in summary, before selling a vehicle to foreign diplomats or foreign missions, you're going to want to request a vehicle tax exemption letter from ofm-fms@state.gov or the applicable regional office. After receiving that vehicle tax exemption letter, you're going to want to send the original ownership documents either to our DC headquarters or the OFM regional office. And lastly, the vehicle will be registered and titled with the Department of State and not the local DMV. And I'm going to pass it back to Beth to lead our Q&A.
Thank you, Sebastian. That was wonderful. I think it's fascinating the difference when we're dealing with these folks that are coming in to purchase vehicles in the dealership. Myself being in the, as we call the DMV region, Maryland, DC, Virginia, we get and see a lot of this coming in. And it was really amazing to me the amount of lack of education that was being shared or what to do. And a lot of folks going down that this should just go into the DMV, let's get them a license plate type of mind. And so it's really it's really nice to one just have it very pointed and direct. And I already have in the chat, Sebastian, I'm wondering if you could just do me a favor to go back the email addresses. Wonder if you could just pop that onto that slide real quick for us. That way anyone can just capture that. I will say with all the attendees, Sebastian and I will definitely do a collaboration so we can share this information out to everyone, not just the link to the recording, but also so you have the documentation.
Yeah, Beth, after
Perfect.
the Q&A slide, we also do have a QR code for our attendees to scan. That's going to give a cheat sheet for them to use. So,
you guys are amazing. This is why I was so excited to have this webinar with you. You guys are on point. Love it. Thank you, Rose, for sharing that. I appreciate it.
yeah, I will
And
quickly
yeah, go ahead.
zoom over to that QR code just so people can quickly scan it.
Great. And I'll let you know, Sebastian, I do have some new attendees that joined us towards the end of the slide. So I think that we're going to have a number of folks coming in that we may need to kind of go over some additional questions. So I just want to give you the heads up about that.
No worries.
So to open up the Q&A session, first, I just want to see if I have anyone that has in the audience a question that they want to raise their hand. I can and come off mute or just come off mute and join in the conversation. We'd love to see what your thoughts and questions are from watching that preview of the process. And especially just looking at that map, Sebastian, I think that opens up a lot of people that are in our industry to realize the amount of contacts and how you're spread across the country supporting the diplomats this way. Tracy, I see you came off mute. Do you want to jump in with a question or a comment or a follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Beth. I
Absolutely.
did, Sebastian, by the way, it's good to see you again. And I really appreciate your great presentation for all of us. You make it seem very straightforward, and we really appreciate that. My question was, what's about the lead time on to get these processed generally? Ballpark.
Yeah. So what I can say for certain is that once we've received these sort of original documents in our office, the processing time is between 1 or 2 days. Same with receiving that actual request for the tax exemption letter. We will respond within 72 hours, most likely way sooner, so that this process can get rolling. The actual time it takes for that ownership document to be mailed and sent to our office or one of our regional offices, that can really vary. I mean, that's FedEx or USPS or any one of the services. So I can't really speak to that. But I can say that in terms of our own internal processes, we move pretty fast within 48 to 72 hours, if not sooner.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. We're just having some chats over the QR code. There we go. Yeah, the QR code, I just brought that up, Sebastian. So
Mm,
everyone that's on the call this afternoon, definitely want to scan that. It's pretty interesting. I just brought this up on my phone and it shows all that contact information
yeah.
that a lot of you were asking about, and that wonderful colored map that we saw
Oh.
where it showed each of the locations across the country.
Mhm.
Let's see.
And then also, if I may, this is Rose. You can also take a picture of the QR code so you can share it with the rest of the team or, the coworkers. So you can have it and share it at the end or, in the future.
Thank you, Rose. Appreciate that. Yeah, this is a really good, I mean, this is a good one pager. It just kind of captures everything right here in place, especially the tax exemption letter, Sebastian. I think that's really interesting, the process to go through and get that. I think that that's been one of the big missing pieces in the puzzle for a lot of the agents processing this is where do you start with it? And that seems to be the very pointed jumping point for any of these types of transactions
Hmm.
to take place. So when we are submitting these by email, do you ever, so I'm curious, as a processor, just to kind of open this up, we deal with a lot of things that are paper, and then we have some things that can be shared digitally or electronic. Is there anything that you can maybe share in that scope of original documents? Is that something that you require on everything with wet signatures? Can you talk about that? Because there's a lot of changes that are occurring with e-signature and the ability to do
Sure.
things digitally that a lot of the agents are really interested in.
So in terms of the actual requesting for a tax exemption, we don't require you to provide any kind of documentation in that actual email to us. The biggest problem that we, I guess, run into when we receive them is the dealership will reach out to us and they'll include maybe one or two pieces of this information, sometimes not even the VIN. And for the for the process to run as smoothly as possible, um, literally just doing bullet points, even if it seems a little bit redundant, like you're emailing from a dark cars in somewhere in Maryland, and it says it in your email and your header or anything, just including in the bullets, just so we can quickly grab your information and get you that personal tax exemption as quickly as possible. I think would be super appreciated by both myself and the rest of my members on my team. In terms of the actual original documents and whether or not we require a wet signature, or I should say, yeah, wet signature, digital signature. I think, and Fatima, please jump in if and correct me if I'm wrong. For now, I think we, at least for the signature portion on a lot of these reassignment documents and titles, we still require that wet signature. All the rest of the information can be digital typed, but the printed name can be typed. But in terms of signatures, we still require a wet signature for verification purposes.
Perfect. Thank you, Sebastian. I appreciate that. You got the thumbs up there, so I think you were spot on. So, with that, one of the next questions that come up in our scope of work is, do you require that documentation, the proof of the digital signature or e-signature being performed? I know that that's been a lot of the conversation with a lot of our DMVs as, okay, we're now going to start accepting e-signature, but then we start to get into sticky points of, well, when and did they really sign it, or that customer reaching out saying, oh, I didn't do that. So are those some of the other necessary items? Go ahead.
So definitely one of the things, especially as U.S. federal government officials, that we're very concerned about is fraud, especially fraud involving foreign members of the foreign mission community, because that can involve a sort of larger number of issues. And so we've made it a point in our office that if a document comes into our office and it does not have the signatures that were requested, we don't just let them take back the documents. We actually have that individual mission member come back into our office and sign those documents in person so that we can verify XYZ person who had purchased this vehicle is who they say they are, is a member of the diplomatic community, and is aware that their name is being put on a state title or ownership document, or reassignment document for that matter.
That makes sense. I'll pause there to see if we have anybody in the audience that wants to come off mute. They have any questions I have a lot of things that I can just in our Q&A fill, and maybe that's helping everyone. And I just want to remind everyone you can come off and join in the conversation or post. I've got the chat here in front of me. Sebastian, I would say, as we're kind of getting the team warmed up on some of the Q&A and questions that they may have, one of the biggest topics that we are discussing almost on a regular basis is the fraud. So since you bring that up, Sebastian, is there anything specific we can do as vehicle title agents? I notice because we're starting to talk more and more about the identification just being as equally as important as the title being verified. So I'm curious, I noticed on the driver's license or the identification card, both that you shared, it ends in a 02. Is there anything you can share to our agents? Okay, there, and you got some different numbers. I'm just curious if there's anything, just like the way that we need to use our NVIDIS or the National Motor Vehicle Title Information System. I'm just curious if there's anything that we need to note in our training documents of things to look for that are fraudulent activity, or the top ones that maybe you see that we can help to keep an eye out for and prevent when we're working with any of these types of transactions.
Sure. The good news for you is that cases of fraud in this area are actually, I've seen pretty rare. I'd say the biggest thing that prevents this kind of fraud is this PID number and how important that is. I know I mentioned this part about ending in the 02, sometimes it ends in 01. This is kind of just an internal identification portion. It's really these first 8 numbers that we're the most concerned about. That's more of a unique identifier here. And as long as we have that information, we can pretty reliably identify the individual and if they are actually a member of the diplomatic community. And I'll mostly leave it there, but I would say yes, this PID number is like the number one portion of information that we require in order to actually verify their identity.
Interesting. And Sebastian, let me ask, if we ever have a client coming in with one of these identifications, I know that that's something that's asked for that tax exemption letter, but if there is concern if this is a true identity or not, do you ever get those kinds of requests to verify that via email? So that way we know that we're not working with a fraudulent identification. Because I know we share a lot of those posts like, this customer came in and was trying to use this identification. We've had a lot of issues with title work where that's going on. Someone might be acting on behalf of the other person. So just some question there. And then I do have some things in the chat to bring up too for you.
I'd say some of the things that I've seen personally while working through cases like this is some dealerships, even I would say outside of the DMV, or just are not familiar working with diplomats, will get either of these 3 documents, and they'll instantly, be a little bit worried that they're receiving some kind of fraudulent documentation just because they're not familiar with any kind of identification that the Department of State produces. Like I said earlier in the presentation, producing any of these 3 documents is just a valid indicator that the vehicle will be registered with our office. From there, if there's any questions about the validity of this individual, that they are who they say they are, if there's any concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to us directly at ofm-fms@state.gov, and we will help you through that process and be able to verify any information that you need to do, I should say that you need in order to complete this purchase and your sale, and quickly get that process rolling of getting ownership documents sent to our office.
Makes sense. And with that being shared, Sebastian, the identifications, do you require, because a lot of the DMVs have started to require a copy of the front and back. I don't know if that was in your slide. Was it both front and back? I just want to make sure to point that out, because those are some of the sticking points we have. We'll send in a transaction, and a simple copy of the back of the driver's license missing can certainly cause for rejection or delay to the customer getting their plate. So
they don't necessarily need to provide a copy of the front and back of their driver's license or any kind of documents. Like in terms of how our systems function, we have all that information stored electronically. And so all their driver's license identification information is already with us. The only thing that we really need physically in our office is the ownership documents with a signature from them. Otherwise, we're not necessarily concerned, especially specifically with these cases, about needing that front or back.
Gotcha.
But I think as a dealership, you should be receiving and looking at a physical card, not just a scan of a card, from the purchasing diplomat or diplomatic mission. But that's not necessarily a requirement from us.
Gotcha. Okay. That's good to know. I will say, and Rose has been in the chat here answering some questions, Sebastian, but I want to make sure to keep you in the loop because I know you're sharing screen and helping to host with me. But there were some questions about the license plate and how that would come out to the customer, to the diplomat once it's processed. Rose did answer that question in the chat about them being handed directly to the foreign mission personally.
Yep.
Is there anything you want to expand on that so that way we can make sure we're giving the clients proper direction? Like maybe they, they're wanting it right away. We always get that we need it like yesterday moment. So any kind of additional things you want to add in about the license plates and how that's distributed?
I would say that in terms of the actual customer, the direction you can give them is that they need to speak to their point of contact with our office, because we have a point of contact with their embassy or consulate, that they can reach out to us on their behalf and pick up those physical plates. But besides that, yeah, they should not be going to the dealerships asking for plates. And I'd say for the most part, the missions and their mission members are aware of how this process works and how our office facilitates getting the diplomatic plates to them.
Perfect. Very good. And on the license plate topic, are there ever times that you have to do, I noticed you had the thing about a replacement title, but what happens if maybe the tag gets lost or there's a need for a replacement plate? Just curious about that question.
Yeah, we have our own internal processes for if a diplomat has a missing plate, that they can reach out to us and submit a transaction. That's not necessarily anything that the dealerships need to be worried about necessarily. It can kind of depend on the case whether or not there's like a fee or anything, but specifically for titles, if there's like missing information or anything or incorrect information, then yeah, this is going to be where that $25 service fee is must be paid out to our office via pay.gov.
Sure. Right. And with the titles, so Sebastian, I've got a number of questions because with what I do, I can come up with all of these. So I've got some of mine, but I do encourage our attendees on there in our webinar this afternoon. Just feel free to put anything in the chat. Got a whole team monitoring that with me. So here we go. Sebastian, we got one out of Carla. They heard me. So what if a diplomat wants us to handle this for them? Is that something that's possible? How can we, as a vehicle title agent, help to play a role in facilitating this transaction?
So as I said earlier, they have a point of contact with our office attached to their embassy or consulate or other, diplomatic mission. If that person wants to assist them in any way with working with our office, that's their job and their responsibility to do so. Whether or not like the dealership can facilitate this process start to end, that's not really what you guys are here for. Primarily, the thing that the mission members need from the dealerships is to send us the original documents. I mean, that is the key thing. Everything else with the actual vehicle registration, vehicle titling, they have a point of contact at their embassy that handles everything related to those matters for them.
Joe. Now, with that being said, so let's say the title, something was incorrect and they needed assistance with that. Let's say one of our offices, that's something they see that we help with title corrections, replacements, and they reach out to us. Would that be something that the agents would be able to help facilitate, or is that something that, again, would be handled by someone else? I'm just curious there.
It depends on the case. let's say, for example, it's the odometer statement on the title is incorrect, and it was the actual mission member's fault, right? They when they sent that information to us, they put it in incorrectly, um, and so we're like, oh shoot, now we need to correct this. Um, that's something that they can go for their point of contact for and request that through us through our internal systems. Um, Otherwise, let's say it's just a title gets like lost in the mail, or for whatever reason, it's the actual dealership that needs this duplicate rather than the mission member. That's when we would have this $25 invoice be sent directly to the dealership as opposed to the mission member. Um, Very rarely will any fee or any other surcharge be sent to the dealership. It's always going to be on a, it's almost always going to be the burden will be on the mission member.
Interesting. So with that real quick, I want to ask some clarification points, Sebastian, on does that mean, and this is a question from Tracy in our chat, does that mean the diplomat has to then travel to a regional office to obtain their plates, or are there other locations available to them? Maybe if you can dig into that, especially with the fact that they have to come into person often to deal with this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this coming from our New York regional office. We often had diplomats, for example, in consulates in Boston or in Philadelphia requesting diplomatic tags from us. In that case, no, they would not be driving up or down to New York just to receive tags from our regional office directly. Those would be mailed out. But I would say that's more of a rare circumstance. And that for the vast majority of your customers, especially in the DMV area, they're going to be coming, or I should say their embassy's point of contact will be coming to us directly to receive those diplomatic plates in person.
And just want to make sure, I know Tracy's on the call. Is there any follow-up questions, Tracy, to that? Anything else that you would like to come off mute and share with your question in the chat?
Well, I apologize, Sebastian. I'm confused, and you know, my region is one of the biggest there in the Northwest, so this would be a big issue. But so to actually get their plates, if I'm understanding you, they will have to go to San Francisco personally.
So it depends on where their consulate is based out of. If they are
I see.
based in the San Francisco office, or in San Francisco, or in Oregon, or in Washington, sorry, let me take a step back. If the individual consulate is based out of San Francisco, yeah, they're going to probably have to come in person. If the consulate is based out of Oregon or Washington, I can't specifically speak to how the San Francisco office does their own processes, but if it's anything like New York, those will most likely be mailed out.
Oh, okay. So I guess I did misunderstand that the plates could be mailed out. I thought that they had to come to an OFM office in person to get the plates.
No, regional offices are a little bit different from how we do things here in DC. Like I said, if it's not actual city, then yeah, chances are it'll be mailed out. Like I said, I can only really speak to how New York does its processes because that's where I came from
Now I get it. Yeah.
in a previous role. But yeah, we mailed out diplomatic plates and titles to Boston, to Philadelphia. But specifically speaking here in DC, yeah, mission member point of contacts are coming here in person and receiving their diplomatic plates.
Yeah, and in that area, that's not as difficult as
exactly. If someone was in Wyoming or South Dakota, not sure there's any consulates there, but if there were trying to get services from San Francisco, yeah, no, they were, from my understanding, they're not driving all the way down.
No. That's that. I knew I was missing something. Thank you for clarifying.
No worries.
That.
It's a little confusing, for sure. Especially how the map is laid out. So, if there's any further questions, please let me know.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it looks like Tracy Rose said in the chat, Sebastian, that really each regional office has their own method.
Yeah,
So it might make sense, to reach out, especially with
exactly.
you with your location. I would say that that's definitely email worthy. What do we do
Yes,
with this one over here? Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank
Any
you.
of our colleagues at the regional offices can explain their own internal processes much better than I can. The thing I
Great.
do want to reiterate, since we do have the map up, is that it is based off of where the duty location of that diplomat or diplomatic mission is. So, and not where they purchased the vehicle, right?
Right.
So, again, just speaking for the DMV, if a diplomat from an embassy here in Washington buys a vehicle in Pennsylvania or West Virginia or Ohio, those aren't going to necessarily go to our regional offices. Those are going to come right to our headquarters in DC because that's where they are based and working out of.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sense. With the DC office having the pickup, since we're on this topic here, is there particular hours that you all are available for those? How is that handled, Sebastian? I know that's probably
Mhm.
maybe a case by case depending on, the appointments or the times that they're coming in, but I'm just curious how that's operating.
So very similar to, again, speaking for the DMV only, um, similar to our phone lines, our offices have open counter hours from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Wednesdays in person. This is typically when the point of contacts from the embassies and other foreign missions come in person to our office and they, um, you know, do whatever business they need to do with us, and then they go back to their own headquarters in order to give individuals plates, titles, whatever documents they need.
Interesting. And, as they're coming in, Sebastian, I'm sure that there's probably sometimes that there's paperwork questions that come up. I'm thinking on not the new titles, but if it's a used vehicle they're
Hmm.
purchasing, we see it often where we've had a lot of regulations put out around the dealer reassignments or how those are being filled out or not
Hmm.
going from a title that just has one reassignment on the back to a separate reassignment paper.
Sure.
Maybe if you can share a little bit about specifically around the reassignments and the used titles. I'm just curious, any of the challenges that you may be seeing on paperwork there, because it's been a lot of the discussion we've had of changes in that mindset of how to fill out those reassignments in the back.
So a lot of that discussion and questions that we get from individual diplomats isn't necessarily done in person. A lot of it's actually done through email. Like I said, we have specific point of contacts, and they bring us these questions. Oftentimes, working in tandem with the dealerships or other sellers. Um, we definitely do, especially on some of these more complicated sales where there is, 5+ reassignment documents. We definitely get questions on that. But for the most part, if we can communicate to the missions what documents we're missing, just to, avoid any issues with title jumping, we're able to do so. And the actual point of contacts are able to get us whatever documents that we need since they, are a little bit more used to doing this as well. So,
Mhm.
but a lot of that communication, like I said, is done through email.
With the reassignments specifically,
Mhm.
do you have any requirements for the dealerships that they have to fill out or utilize all the reassignments on the back, or are you accepting, all of the secure dealer reassignment forms that they'll usually have in addition to the title?
So the main thing that we're concerned about is basically making sure we're tracking the reassignment from that original state title um, all the way to whatever current reassignment document we get, usually say Maryland or Virginia. Um, I don't necessarily know if we have any strict requirements on the entire page being filled out, but we do need a clear chain of reassignments to make sure that there's no title jumping issues, especially if we're, crossing state lines.
Absolutely. I just pause there. I just want to check and make sure I don't have anyone that'd like to jump in and ask any questions. I can ask these types of questions all afternoon, but I want to make sure we give our attendees a chance too. All Right. You guys are pretty quiet. So Sebastian, some of the challenges we have are verifications. Oh, I see just Rose unmuted. Rose, I just saw you unmuted in the group. Did
Yeah,
you want
so
to chat?
I just want to reiterate that we ask for that email, I mean, for tax exempt letters. Because some people say, well, why don't you accept the tax card? I mean, dealership can
Mhm.
accept a tax card only as a form of identification, but not as a tax exemption. So that's why we want to reiterate that they send us that email so we can attach a letter confirming, in fact, that person is tax exempt. Sometimes different countries have different limitations, and we just want to confirm that. And that's why we required the dealers to send us an email with all that information so we can respond to you guys with that letter.
That makes sense. We get a lot of that, Rose. We get a lot of things brought to our desk that aren't true proofs for exemption. So I think that's one of those questions that we often get in the community. Is this customer really tax exempt or not? And this is talking about just across the board, all types of transactions, businesses, those that may own farmland. There's a lot of varying tax exemptions that are out there. So that's really good to hear that you come back and do that kind of confirmation. Because I feel like out in the field, a lot of times we're being presented with a letter or card or something printed out or an email showing something to say that they're exempt. But a lot of times we've come down to it that it's really not that they're exempt from any of the taxes relating to the vehicle purchase. So that's good to hear that you have that follow through where you're coming back with something in email to confirm what they're being presented with.
Mm-hmm.
It's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rose. That was definitely a good point to bring up. Appreciate that. So Sebastian, the paperwork and things when they're presented, a lot of what we're using at our desk, a lot of what we discuss as vehicle title agents are some of the tools that we're using, like Invitis that I mentioned earlier, the National Motor Vehicle Information Titling System. Say it all out. We're just going to say Invitis the rest of the call now. So, is that a tool that you utilize for the used vehicles when they're coming through for processing? I'm curious if you run across how you're utilizing that tool for verification. Like we've really been, I feel like across the country, that's become a very popular checkpoint since we had the pandemic. Around 2020, it started to become more popular out in the field to utilize. And now we have all of the states playing a role in sharing that data. So I'm just curious on your side, how that tool may play a role in the transactions that you're processing.
Sure. I can't fully speak to it because this is getting a little bit on the technical side of our own internal systems, which we have a whole separate team for. But I believe our own internal systems for older vehicles does connect to a database for verification purposes in terms of verifying, VIN, make, model of a vehicle before we go ahead and, you know, finalize our own processing. Um, I'm a little bit shaky on the details, so I don't want to give any misinformation. But
You're good.
at least for like a few years back, yeah, where our system does connect for verification purposes.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's we have a lot of new tools to utilize, but I think the biggest factor is, like I mentioned, that we're starting to now have all of the state jurisdictions playing a role to share that data. One of the things that we're all really waiting for a lot of modernization projects to happen. And speaking of modernization, that's usually how, you start to plug in all the light strands and they start to all light up and we can all know, we may be doing something in Maryland, but all the way out over there in Washington State, they're going to be able to see the same things and verify the same live data. And we're starting to have more and more, that live data. You pull an electronic motor vehicle record, that information is usually more current than that paper that you're even looking at to do the transaction. So just on a modernization note, are there any projects or anything that your department is doing to modernize or making changes in how you're processing these transactions? I only bring that up because it's just a topic where we're seeing, there's a lot of changes in some parts of the country and not in others. So just curious if there's anything that you guys are working on for modernization yourselves with the titling process.
In terms of tiling process itself, I don't know if we're undergoing any sort of big modernization projects. A lot of it is just like smaller tweaks, like I said, in our own internal systems in terms of record keeping. Um, and like I said, we have a other dedicated team in terms of our managing our internal systems. Um, but from what I can say is that we are constantly improving and evolving our systems um, to, more efficiently, I would say, adjudicate the needs and requests from the diplomatic corps um, to speed up processing on their end and then hopefully on your end as well. Because obviously, as we went over, this process doesn't necessarily end with the vehicle being registered. Oftentimes, you're reaching back out to us for the titling process as well. So
Yeah.
any improvements that we're making are definitely a little bit more granular, but anything that, speed up and make it more efficient. So
Absolutely. I think, just the fact of the starting point to start that communication is a big one. And I'm curious when folks reach out to request that tax exempt letter, is that something that starts the process on your side that documents, we're going to be expecting this to come into the office? Curious how that ties together with the processing once the paperwork arrives.
yeah, definitely. I don't think we have one single unified system for it, but definitely we're all tracking which documents are coming in. Oftentimes that we're already receiving in our systems requests for the vehicle registration, even before the paperwork tax exemption is sent to us. And so I'd say for our adjudicators here are definitely always on the lookout um, for what new vehicle registration requests are coming in from the missions. Um, and once we receive those vehicle tax exemption requests, that's like definitely an internal um, queue for us to be ready to receive those ownership documents and finish the entire process.
Well, I
Sebastian,
think it,
just, oh,
oh,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
Tracy. Go ahead. No, no, no. Go ahead,
No,
Tracy. Jump
this is
in.
just for my curiosity.
Mm.
About how many of these transactions would you say you guys are overall around the country doing on a
Oh my
yearly
gosh,
basis?
that's a great question. Fatima, do you have any numbers off the top of your head about that? I don't know if she's still on with us.
Let me take a peek. Let's see.
I mean, we can come up with that number, but we have to check
Yeah, we
the,
definitely have abilities to run that
yeah.
data, but I'd be lying if I said I knew that answer off the top of my head. Um, and it's not just obviously the stuff that we're doing on the DMV side. OFM has a very broad mandate,
Oh,
and
sure.
the DMV is just, one part of that.
Oh, and
Um,
I just meant the DMV processing here for
yeah,
these diplomats.
I couldn't say. I expect the number to be large, though. I mean, definitely into at least the tens of thousands, if I really had to guess.
A year. Wow.
Yeah,
I never would have
easily,
expected that'd be that
easily.
many. Oh my
Wow.
gosh. Amazing. Okay. Thank
With
you.
all the insurance updates we have to process, with all the non letters of non-eligibility that get requested for our office, um, it's not just these vehicle registrations and vehicle titles. We do a bunch of, various services for the diplomatic
Yeah, and I
corps.
was specifically just meaning the vehicle registration and titles was what I
Oh,
was
oh,
the volume
that's
I was
probably
curious about.
a little bit smaller. Still decently large, I assume, but yeah, I don't have numbers for you, unfortunately.
And let me ask you one more follow-up kind of to this whole slideshow, and I'm sorry I missed part of it with a phone call. Do you guys require proof of insurance? Because that I know
Yep.
that varies state by state. We don't in Washington, um, but I thought I might have missed it.
On our end, before we finish processing a vehicle, we absolutely require proof of insurance. We have our own required minimums for the diplomatic community to meet. That varies a little bit between standard vehicles and motorcycles. But yes, and the premiums are, or I should say the minimums are, I think, much higher than the average, American private citizen.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, we do.
And so would it be ideal for us as titling agents and processors to get that information for you to speed up the process?
Um, I'm not necessarily sure. To be honest with you, it's not, we don't usually run into problems with diplomats failing to present us insurance. One of the steps that they need to do in order to actually submit a vehicle registration request through their systems is to attach their insurance declaration page and provide us with the policy number and company and minimums. So they're not really getting very far with us if they're not even starting with that information. Um, Oftentimes, dealerships will send us packets with the insurance declaration page included. That's always welcome. It's absolutely welcome, but not needed. We require them to attach it electronically in our systems as well.
Oh, good to know.
Thanks, Sebastian. Appreciate that. Thanks, Tracy, for those questions. That was really good. I know we've got about a handful of minutes here, so I just want to see if anyone has anything else they'd like to come off mute and ask Sebastian. I think everyone's just a tentative audience here. Sebastian, they're just paying attention and listening. I think a lot of this is new material to a lot of folks because, it's something that we just don't deal with typically with our files going into the DMV offices. So it's really interesting to learn this process.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask, perfect. Okay, I was going to say, why don't we get it on the QR code? That way, if anyone needs that one pager, we're going to follow up with some notes. And Sebastian, if there's anything you or your team would like to add into the presentation or to share with the attendees, let me know. But I really think that this
Absolutely.
page right here captures a lot of the contact information that we would need to help facilitate or work with your office if there was someone that needed this type of assistance purchasing a vehicle. But is there anything else that you would share as in best practices, things that maybe you've seen past your desk? I mean, we've had all types of conversations on our webinars. To our chair, Karen, who joined us this afternoon, bringing up the fact that we've had to deal with erasable pens on documents.
Mm.
How are you, or what are some anomalies that you've seen in some of the transactions? I mean, I know you have different teams doing things, but I'm just curious, maybe a story you can share with us of a scenario you went through, because that's what we talk about as vehicle title agents. We had this customer and this is all the challenges we went through and this is
Sure.
the roadblocks we ran into. So a lot of our community, we talk to each other about those things. So I just want to, as we're in closing state here, just want to capture anything that comes to your mind that sticks out and what you've been processing there at the OFM.
I think I'll use these sort of closing minutes to kind of reiterate some boring points first.
Oh,
Um, I mean, really,
I'm just
if we're
teasing.
talking about efficiency, knowing which email to email us at which is ofm-fms@state.gov, making sure to include as much of this information as possible: buyer's name and PID, mission name, VIN, make, model, year, and color, all your dealership information. Like I said, it's the boring part, but if we're able to get as much information as possible, that helps us out tremendously. The second thing I would say is, for as much as you're able, making sure that when you're assisting our diplomatic clients, making sure we're signing their documents. Oftentimes they neglect to include signatures on either the front of state titles because they'll sign it in one place, but they'll neglect to print it somewhere else or sign it somewhere else. And so it means that they have to come in person to our office, which, really slows down the process in terms of getting them diplomatic plates. And then lastly, I would say in terms of an interesting case, it had to do with reassignment documents. And I won't say which country, but I had one client who had 6 separate reassignment document pages. And it was like putting together a puzzle. it was really difficult. Oftentimes the names weren't matching of either the agent or the actual dealership. And so, I had to do some sleuthing. I had to look one of the dealers up on LinkedIn to see why he was appearing at two different dealerships, and it turns out like he was just working at two different ones. It was very confusing. Um, and so just like on again, very boring answer, but helping us keep these reassignment documents as orderly and as straightforward as possible, so we can so we can look from start to finish on how a vehicle is being transferred, especially across state lines. Um, I'd say it would help any of our adjudicators out tremendously. And I think all my colleagues on the call would agree with that.
Well, I'm glad that you shared that, Sebastian, because, when we come across transactions like that, that's exactly what we talk about. So, welcome to the club. You're right there with us. It's always those scenarios that we are like, that's what we chat about when we gather together. So, we appreciate you sharing that with us and all of the great presentation. This has been a great webinar this afternoon. I appreciate you sharing all of this content with our attendees. I think the biggest thing I can hear through this webinar and that what you're sharing with us, Sebastian, is this contact. Utilizing that email, making sure to reach out. It sounds like you all make yourselves very available, especially in the email box. Don't wait for that one day that there's a call center available, but utilizing that email seems to be one of the biggest catching points today. And I think, that gives us all an opportunity to think about too, the things that we can do to help with the processing, things that we can do via digital communication versus waiting back and forth with paperwork. I feel that more and more today, things get lost when that happens, that back and forth. So having that digital communication is super important. Sebastian or anyone on your team, I just want to see if there's anyone that has anything as we wrap up this afternoon they'd like to share as final thoughts or closing statements.
Thank you for the opportunity to share all the information.
You're very welcome, Rose. We really appreciate you being here, gathering everyone together and helping to make sure this presentation, just helped our community to be further educated. That's what we're here for. That's what we spend the time out of our day to do, is to better ourselves, further the education on how to take care of the clients with their titles and registration. So we appreciate it. And we look forward to for future collaboration. As I mentioned, Rose, in the beginning of the call, the DC Auto Show seminar that we do together, having you guys there this year was really a big add. So we're looking forward to hopefully having you all back in January of 2027. And that also gives everyone the knowledge that when we put out that information about that event, this is another space you can come to in person, register, come into the room, and you can be in person asking questions and participating. So just keep an eye out for those events. And it's the more that the better job you can do. It's just what it is. The knowledge is key. So Sebastian, thank you for sharing all these highlights, the way to do the processing with OFM to make sure that we're doing the communications on those tax exemption letters. These tidbits and these tools go so far in our community, and we really appreciate that. And thanks for your time today too.
Definitely. Thank you, Sebastian.
Absolutely. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Tracy. Really great, being able to do this kind of outreach and letting us help you help us, really. I mean, that's the spirit of it, right?
That's exactly it. I definitely agree. That's how we get these things done. So we appreciate it. And, any of the attendees that are on our webinar today, make sure you use that QR code that Sebastian used. We'll be sharing out material in your email. So just take a moment, take a look at that. If you have follow-up questions, know to reach out to us, reply back to those emails and say, hey, I'd like to have a little bit more details about this, and we'll help to get that connected for you. So thank you all for joining this afternoon. It's wonderful to be together. I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. It's productive.